Well, hey everybody, it's Sandy and welcome back to my channel dedicated to helping you advocate for your own health one topic at a time. So guys, lately I've devoted almost all of the product reviews that I've done to respirators. In fact, I have a playlist of respirator reviews and I'm going to link that video here. And the question that keeps coming up is, am I only using respirators now? And what about the previous recommendations I've made in the way of fabric masks? Yeah, so first of all, I just want to say thank you and welcome, and thank you again. I'm humbled and I'm just overjoyed to see that my channel is experiencing some really wonderful growth right now. And of course, I want to say thank you to the people who have been with me for quite some time. For those of you who don't know, I started this channel as a public service. So when I have links down in the description box to take you to products that I recommend that have to do with your health, safety, well-being, those are not affiliate links. So my way forward is to grow the channel because I don't do any kind of commission structure. I don't want the bias that commission creates. And I think really when I see YouTube creators out there recommending things that they're also making money off of themselves, it really undermines the credibility of the recommendation. And it's hard for me to sort of sort through that and figure out what would be a good option for me. So I don't do that. My way forward is to grow my subscribership. So if you like my content, but you haven't yet subscribed, I will thank you in advance for considering subscribing, and thank you for sharing and for recommending my channel to anybody who might find it interesting or helpful. Yeah, so I have this question that keeps coming up since, lately almost all of my product reviews have been respirators, N95 NIOSH approved respirators. The question is, well, what about all these other products that you've recommended in the past, and are you ever using any of those? So I am going to go through some of them particularly, like the Everbrand, which is now the Hereafter, the DNA mask, and the Synovia. Now, the first thing I want to address is that I have had some people express some dissatisfaction with me and say something like, well, I bought all of these based on your previous review or your recommendation a while back, and now I feel like I'm just out all this money and it's not even what you're using nowadays. I didn't really change my mind about any of these things, but one thing that changed a lot, two things changed a lot actually. One was the nature of this virus, the current variant being much, much more transmissible than the previous ones. Same thing with Delta. Delta was much more transmissible than the variants that came before it. So what we saw was a shift from maybe a mixture of large respiratory droplet transmission in some aerosolized particles to very highly aerosolized particle type transmission. And that really changes the facts on the ground in terms of what's appropriate to wear on your face to protect yourself and to contain spread and protect other people around you. The other thing that's changed is the availability of things like PPE. So a lot of what I was doing early on in my channel was born out of the need that people had to, first of all, understand, what to look for in a mask. I actually developed my own set of criteria at the time for what to look for in a fabric mask. That included a non-woven layer, for example, polypropylene. In fact, I developed those criteria and made those recommendations. And by the way, it was like looking for a needle in a haystack. So that people would have some options when PPE wasn't widely available. You could get KN95s and KF94s, and to this day, I don't really recommend those. So the short answer to the question, am I using some of these other products? And I will go through some of them individually, but the short answer is mostly no. I am mostly these days reaching for a NIOSH N95 NIOSH approved respirator. Now, I said mostly, I didn't say only, so I will talk about that when I discuss some of these individual products. I do like that these are so readily available now. I have reviewed several that come down to, when you include the discount code that I have with some of these retailers, come down to around $1 an item, which I think is pretty hard to beat. I do like the standardization that they offer because if you can recall, before we had something like this, I was mostly extrapolating. I just like that the NIOSH approval removes a lot of the guesswork. In fact, it removes all the guesswork about the medium. The NIOSH approval means that this medium has stood up to the scrutiny of some empirical testing and that it has the capability to filter down to a very small particle size. Now, that of course does not speak to the fit, and that's another thing that I've said before, and I'm going to keep saying it on this channel. There are two issues that both have to be satisfied in order to get the kind of filtration that you want, and one is the medium. So this medium has been tested because it's a NIOSH approved N95, but any of these other mediums, like for example, here's a DNA mask. This has a trilaminate polypropylene, so it's a 3-layer filter. It's really the same medium as this. This medium, brand new, and this medium will filter the same when put on the kind of machine that tests for that. But of course, that does not speak to the fit. When using a high resistance medium like this, You absolutely need a seal so that any air that you breathe in and out won't come around it. So if there is the slightest leak, the slightest hole right in here, let's say I don't seal that down and I've got some room for leak, you bet that's where the air is going to come through, because that's the path of least resistance. Okay, so there are two issues. It's the medium and it's the fit or the seal. So I said I would mention, I think there's three that have come up repeatedly, and that's the DNA, the Synovia, and the Everbrand, which is now the Hereafter. And I think the reason those three have come up is because back when I had done a video a long time ago, I think this is long before we even had vaccines, and we certainly didn't have PPE that was good, widely available to us. And those were my three fabric masks that were my favorites, given one for each category. And as a matter of fact, I believe that the Synovia was actually a completely different mask than what Synovia has out now, because now their current model is the Synovia Pro. Let me just preface this by saying I hope that some of these manufacturers, and I suspect they will, start to pivot and produce things that address the current situation. But I'm going to start out with the DNA. So this is made out of a trilaminate polypropylene middle layer. That's the filter, which is actually 3 layers: melt blown, spun bound, melt blown, very much like an N95. In fact, exactly like an N95, but there's fabric on either side of it. And this is a reusable. Now I can see two things just off the top of my head where the N95 actually has a leg up over this. The first thing is that the N95 has these very flat edges. Most of them have some form of a very flat edge, even if it's on the interior of what you see as the exterior of the device, and they're made to seal and sit flat on the face so that you have that seal and the air will go through them rather than around them. Well, I think the DNA does a better job than any other fabric mask I have seen for that, but under the chin it does have this elastic, and the elastic is puckered, it's not flat. So you really have to test that. Just like we look for fogging in the safety goggles to see if the top seal is good, you also want to look for any fog coming down beneath where you have this puckering. So you can put a mirror underneath and take a look in a large mirror, hold a hand mirror under here, take a big deep breath, let it out, and see if you have any fogging in that hand mirror where you're holding it up against that puckered border. So that's one thing I could see that might be a potential issue. And I would think the more time that you own this, the more repeated washings it's subjected to, the more that might break down, just like anything else in here. The other place where the DNA is at a disadvantage is that being a reusable, washable mask, it is going to lose its charge in the polypropylene. So polypropylene works not only by filtration and trapping filters, and I did a video a while back, very nerdy, very boring, but a good explanation of how filtration of polypropylene works. I'm going to find that and link it right here. But it also works by its charge. It has a charge that will deactivate virus and kill bacteria. It disrupts the outer membrane of viruses and bacteria so that it renders them inactive. So once this gets wet, and as a matter of fact, once this gets wet, and that's why after a long period of wear where you've been exhaling into it and it becomes moist, it starts to lose that charge. Well, this will too, especially if you wash it. So the filtration on this has been tested up to 10 washes. And I've said before, I really wish they would test it further than that. I know they can. If it still filters like new after 10 washes, maybe it still does after 15, but they want you to buy more of these. So I had said in a previous video that if you want to use this, you just don't want to go to the way of the disposables, then this is probably the closest thing to an N95 that I have found. And I would order 7 of these. I would have 7 of them, and I would put each one in its own paper bag, put a day of the week on each paper bag. So if this one is Sunday, then I wear it Sunday. And then after Sunday, it goes in that bag and it sits for those other 6 days. After that period of time, any bacteria and virus in here is dead or deactivated. I don't think you have to wash it. I would try to avoid washing this so that I could not start that process of breaking it down and actually have that charge for as long as possible as well. You can't do that indefinitely. So at some point you are going to have to be relying on the filtration. So I could argue that at some point in the day when you've exhaled into this enough with your moist exhalant, you're probably breaking down the charge on this as well, and you're going to be relying on its filtration. Okay, so that's what I have to say about the DNA. Do I think this is still an excellent mask for a reusable product? I think it's about the best thing you can get. And yes, I highly recommend it. So what about the Everbrand? Here's something you haven't seen me talk about in a while. So this we looked at a long while back. I don't have the Hereafter. As far as I know, only the name has changed. This uses a product called Viral Off, which is a finishing product. It does come off after repeated washings. It reduces viral and bacterial load by 99% in 2 hours. And this does have a filter layer that is 2 layers of polypropylene, although we don't know the density of that polypropylene and they don't give a filtration efficiency. So I do not know, where this medium lies. In addition to that, this is not the kind of a medium where you can get anything that approximates a seal. So I'm really haven't been reaching for this one lately. I think that if you want to use this, I have a lot of people who have said that they've used this. They've continued to use it even right now with Omicron and haven't had a problem. All the more power to you. I would try to make sure that it fits as well as possible. You might also use it with something called the Fix the Mask device. So Fix the Mask is a device that's meant to put on top of any fabric mask you use or even a surgical mask, and it will push it down with pressure in all the way around a periphery so that you get a better seal. Now, I did a video a while back on Fix the Mask device. I'm going to link that video here. And I would recommend you think about that if you're going to be using the DNA mask. You might also see how this works fitted over a surgical mask. But everybody's going to be different in terms of what kind of a result they get and what kind of a fit they get. I do think that these days it's, again, the medium and the fit. The fit is very important. For me, I just don't get the kind of fit that I would want with this medium. I don't see any empirical testing for particle size filtration. And then finally, there's the Synovia, which you guys know that I am in awe of their technology. I'm fascinated with it. Now, this one's a Synovia Pro. This wasn't even out yet back when I did my original mask reviews. So Synovia has a novel technology that it's clean, it's sustainable, and it reduces viral and bacterial load by 99% in under 30 minutes. I suspect it's on contact. I've talked about this before. The way they do the testing is they inoculate a fabric, with a bacterium or a virus, and they walk away, they come back in 30 minutes, and they see like 99% of the load is gone. I really wish they would do this in a 5-minute test or in a 10-minute test. I don't know if it's practical or possible the way that the testing is set up, but this one is a far cry from viral off. It's also not a finishing product that just gets like sprayed on or put on. It's actually part of the textile. So they came out with this Pro a while back, and the Synovia Pro does include a layer of polypropylene. Now, in my opinion, this was perfect when it came out, and I still do use it, but very differently than I used to. So the polypropylene in here filters down to a 3-micron particle size. So that's a far cry from a 0.3, which is used in the testing for an N95 that's NIOSH approved, or 0.1, which we've seen with the DNA and any number of media. So at 3-micron particle size, this isn't going to do a lot in terms of aerosol filtration. Yes, it does have the antibacterial, antiviral, antimicrobial quality, but you don't want to rely on that without the filtration. So the way I use this now is when I'm in an outdoor setting where I can't be distanced, yes, I will use a mask in that setting. I suspect that it's not impossible for it to be transferred outdoors depending on the number of people in a close proximity. So I will use this for something like that, which I would call a low risk situation. I also like to put the Synovia on top of something like an N95. It seems like a lot of bulk, but you could put this on top of the DNA. A long while back when I was first vaccinated, I wore a Synovia on top of a DNA, and I showed that when I did the video for when I first got vaccinated with Moderna. So yeah, that's my answer to that. Arguably not the answer that everybody wants or likes, but I think it's the best answer for right now. And that's why you might hear me saying something that sounds like it's contradicting something that I said before. Some people watch a video that maybe is a year old, and then they think because they just saw it that that's what I'm recommending now. Okay, so I hope that answers this question that keeps coming up, and the answer being yes, these days I'm mostly reaching for an N95 respirator, not necessarily this one. There are any number of ones that I like that I've reviewed here on this channel. These days, with such a highly aerosolized variant circulating around, I feel that that's really the best protection of what's going to work for me. I do get some reuse out of these, but careful reuse. So always do a fit test again when you go to reuse these. The multiple putting on and taking off will ultimately change the shape, stretch the straps, and you might find that you're not getting the same kind of seal you were, and it will be very important that you have that. Again, that speaks to the fit. So let me know if this was helpful, and until next time, be well. Bye-bye.